So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Still letting people in, so I'll give it just a few more seconds for any more late arrivals. Right, we'll get started, guys. Okay, so good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Geraldine Collins. I'm Head of Operations for Customer Services and also one of the leads working on the customer programme. So can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is what we're going to cover off with you this afternoon, and it is all, we're going to give you a quick update of what's been going on, which Kieran will cover just after me. And we're going to tell you about some fabulous work that's been happening with regards to children's licensing. I do also want to take this opportunity to thank everybody that's been working on the programme incredibly hard. There really has been some fantastic work that's taken place, and hopefully this afternoon we'll give you a good update of what's been going on. Next slide, please, Kieran. Okay, so just to give you some context of the children's licensing and what they're responsible for. So it's work permits, child performance licenses, chaperone licenses, and it is a statutory responsibility to investigate referrals about children that could be working illegally. The service experienced immense pressure in the run-up to the Commonwealth Games, and as a result of this, it did expose weaknesses which we got involved in with working with the service to look at making these improvements that we'll be going through with you this lunchtime. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read all of this out to you, but this is what we call the problem statement that the service was facing, and really what we have actually picked up on and moved forward with the work that the programme have been doing. So you can see there some of the quotes that we received. So children in Birmingham do not get the same opportunities as children in London. Things can't get stretched. Things can get stretched and things can get missed. I will not accept a child who lives in Birmingham as I'm not going to be able to get a licence. So, you know, a number of issues there that have been highlighted. Next slide, please. So the aim of the work that has been underway has been to look to redesign the current solution, and by using our understanding of the current processes of licensing issues and the permits to absolutely improve the user experience going forward. Next slide, please, Kieran. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Kieran, who's going to just recap on the work that has been happening over the past few months, and then after that we'll move into in more detail the work with regards to children's licensing.
Okay,
thanks, Kieran.
Okay, so hello, I'm Kieran Swells. I'm delivery manager. For those of you that don't know, delivery manager, kind of imagine project manager, but in the agile delivery space. So how we build upon building software and services in small kind of iterative approaches, which you'll be able to see here. So the work to date so far that's been done from a variety of people across the service. So as you can see there, the dates that have been completed, so going back from October last year. So reviewing the services as it was to understand how we need to get to where we want to be. So if you see things like the 2B journey, that's what we're looking at there. So things like evaluate the data of the service area, understanding basically what was the problem that we needed to fix. So how long did it take the license to be granted? What was the backlog of things, and then how to move forward from there. So really this phase one is kind of what we call discovery phase, so understanding the problem that we're trying to fix, and that was done back in October, November. Moving into phase 2. So this is really the kickoff of how we move forward to develop the services that we're going to show you that we've built for a prototype. So things like list out the user stories, for the to-be thinking, what we want to get to, what's our gold standard here. And also things like user journeys, understanding from start to finish. If you are trying to apply for a chaperone license, how do you start? How do you work your way into the service, and how do you get out of it? Yeah, looking at things like risks, riskiest assumptions, user journeys, and all those kind of intrinsic elements of a service that we need to take into account. That was me. So Sarah will go through some of the work that's been completed in the service design space.
Sorry, Kieran, just before we hand over to Sarah, I have just put something in the chat. If anybody has any questions as we're going through, just pop them in the chat and then we'll come back to them at the end of the session. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you.
Perfect. Next slide, please, Kieran. So we have developed a high-level chaperone to-be journey, which we are using alongside our detailed to-be journey. And high-level journeys are a light touch visual overview of the end-to-end process. In this case, is the process of applying for and obtaining a chaperone license. And they help us to understand and highlight the key phases and steps, visually indicate what we are testing and what we are not, and where this fits within the journey, and visualize a process that is easy to interpret quickly without a detailed run through. I'm just going to quickly share these with you. So if Kieran, you could follow me on that Miro board.
Yeah.
Are you following me, Kieran?
Yeah.
I know.
Perfect. So this is our high-level journey. Just quickly before we run through it, the black solid lines are for online applications and the dashed ones are for offline. So we've broken this down into the key phases. The first one being information and guidance. So the applicant starting the journey and accessing information on the website. And then the chaperone license landing page, legislation and eligibility. And then the next phase is accessing and filling out the application form. So this is when the user's inputting data and uploading any documentation, the summary of the application, the payment and submission and confirmation. And the next phase is information processing and visibility. So this is the application being received, assigning that to a caseworker, and any automatic updates that happen within the system. And applicants can track their progress at any time to see where their application is within the journey. And then we have the chaperone licensing pathway. So these 3 steps, so training, DBS and references, happen in no set order, but all these 3 steps have to happen before an interview. And then we go to the end, which is the final QA and outcome, and the license/ID card being sent out, then received. And then we have some BAU stuff, so the ID card replacement, license expiry reminder, through to reapplication. And one of the good things about this journey being so high level is that changes that happen within the detailed to-be journey are most likely not visible in this. So I'm just going to run through some of the changes that have been made on our to-be journey. We initially had live statistics, so a live number of applications currently being processed. However, this is not needed as applicants are only interested in how long it will take to receive their license, and the time frame of that will be visible to applicants. And in terms of filling out the actual application form, we previously had a guided journey, which was to help applicants identify which license they needed. However, this has been removed as the guidance will be clear enough for the applicant to understand which license it is that they're looking for. And we also had a previously applied section, which we have taken out because the amount of data that can be pulled over is limited to just the name and address, and the address may have changed. So this was just adding a layer of complexity which isn't needed. And at the very end of when they're filling in their application form, we used to have a digital signature, and this has now been replaced with a tick box to make it easier. And the interview is optional to be in person or online. However, if an applicant can't upload documents online, they are only given the option of an in-person interview, so they can bring all that documentation along with them. And I'm just going to briefly show you the what we are testing version of this high-level journey. So this journey here is highlighting what we are testing now, so our U5 test plan, and we will have different versions of these depending on what's being tested. Everything that is greyed out is not being tested, so we're not testing offline applicants at the moment. We are mostly looking at online guidance. So we're testing the chaperone license information, legislation eligibility, accessing and filling out the document, summary. We're not testing the payment, and we're testing the submission and confirmation. So that is a whistle-stop tour of our high-level journeys. Happy for you to stop sharing your screen, Kieran.
That's great. Thank you very much.
So for our next steps for the service design work, we'll iterate the offline journey to align with responses from legal, develop what we're testing versions of the high-level journey for the next round of testing, and continue to change and iterate the 2B journey in line with user research insights and responses to queries. I'll now be handing over to Grace, I believe.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace. I'm the user research lead on this project. So I'll be taking you through the chaperone application form. If we can go to the next slide, please, Kieran. This application form was a real priority for us. Right from the very early on user research we did, we found out that the current form wasn't fit for purpose. It wasn't very user friendly. It was difficult to fill in and to return, and that users would really prefer a digital solution. We also heard from the staff side that many applications were coming in incomplete. So we needed a way that worked both for staff and for users to make sure that users were able to give the information that was needed in a way that worked for them. So we've been working with our content designers to review and update the guidance on what it means to be a chaperone and how to apply to be one. And alongside that is the form that's actually used to apply to be a chaperone. So the first bit where you put in all of the details that we need from you to be able to process your application.
Was
As
the old
Sarah
form
said-
was the old form a digital form or a PDF form?
It was a PDF form. I think there was a Word version of it, so you could edit it, but people still struggled with that, definitely. And then if you were to submit it, it'd be emailing it into the service.
Okay,
So
sure.
yeah, there was sort of a digital element to it, but people found that quite difficult to use. They would prefer something that was based on perhaps a website or something like that, where it was a one-stop shop for all of that, rather than having to download it, save it, upload it, email it across.
Sure.
Cool, thank you. So this is the first thing that we'll be testing in this first round of research, like Sarah said. So we've created a prototype for this to help us understand how users interact with it, whether it meets their needs. So this is just something that we're putting in front of users. This is our wireframe or our prototype. It's not a build, it's just an indication of what we could do in the future. And it shows the content and the proposed layout for the new form. It has some functionality, so I'll show you in a minute. You can click through it, but it is not functionally built like a build. You can't actually enter some responses. So next slide, please, Kieran. Just a couple of warnings with this demo before I go into it. It doesn't reflect our final version of the form. We are currently getting feedback from our users, and Kira will go more into what that looks like at the moment. But we will be updating this. It will be created collaboratively, it will be changed collaboratively, and it will be influenced by what our users have said about it. We will be updating it and putting it through to a build. It doesn't need to be perfect for us to test it, and it definitely isn't perfect at this moment. But the idea is that it will be changed. We just needed something tangible to put in front of users to give them sort of a flavour for what it was we were offering. We will learn from this prototype. It's low cost solution at the moment, and we will then apply our learnings to a higher cost build. So Kieran, if you can share your screen with the prototype on. Can you just go to the back end view of it, please? The other tab you've got open. So you can see this is sort of what it looks like in this software that we're using. We're using software called Figma. What we've done is we sort of laid out the approach screen by screen. So the first couple of screens are all the guidance, and then everything else is sort of that application form. So there are some conditional responses. So if you select one thing, it will take you to one screen versus another. And again, this is something we found would be really valuable from our user research, where users weren't quite sure which parts of the form they needed to fill in, particularly if you say yes to this, go to question 5B or whatever, people could find that a little bit confusing. So being able to digitize this logic is really helpful. So if you can go into the play screen. Thank you very much. So this should look quite familiar to everyone. It is a mock-up of a Birmingham City Council website, and here is where we've got all of our new and reviewed guidance. So if you click next, and the guidance continues to the next page, and you can see at the bottom of that page, it says your application. You can either log in or start anew. So if you can click start anew, Kieran. And then it takes you through this screen. So this should be quite familiar. We've tried to emulate a lot of what is GDS good standard. So where we've got radio buttons, we've got save and continue. People can return to this if they need to. So if you want to select no to that, if you select yes, it will boot you out, because we don't want people who have been convicted of crimes against children or vulnerable people, because they will not be suitable to be a chaperone. And yes, I do have a DBS certificate. There's a bit of guidance on there if you don't know what a DBS certificate is. Are you willing for us to check? Yeah, why not? I think that's part of the application, so yeah. And then you can see that there's a couple of different data entry fields. So we'll ask people to put in their certificate number, the name and the date of birth. These are all the things that we need to be able to access that certificate. At the moment, you can see, Kieran, if you try to click on it, we can't actually enter into it. And this is, again, just to give people a flavour for this. We're not actually going to be collecting their DBS certificate number at this stage. Would you like to click continue? And then you can see we've got a bit of guidance around each of the different steps that will be implemented into each of these, and we're just making sure that at every step we're getting all of that information we need from the chaperone applicant. There won't be as much missing data because we will have validation fields. So for example, on that previous screen that we showed, or if you click yes, I think there'll be another one in a minute, you will only be able to enter certain bits. So if I left this blank and clicked save and continue, it would come up with an error and say we need your full name. So I think it's really important that we have some kind of digital solution to make sure that we are getting all of that information, as that has been a pain point for staff in the previous version. I can see, Simon, that you've got a question in the chat that says, what if the person clicks yes? Do they get stopped and then go back? Kieran, if you can just refresh your screen. You just press the refresh button, we can run that scenario through.
So sorry, that wasn't actually what my question was.
Oh, okay, no worries.
My question was, what if they click yes to then be told, no, you can't do this because you're not a fit and proper person, and then they go back and then click no and proceed? That's
a good question. So we have been thinking about anti-personas and people who might abuse this. There is the potential that someone says yes, it kicks them out. They come in from either a new laptop, something that hasn't got cookies on it, and they restart the application themselves again. This would be something that would be shown up on their DBS though. So the DBS should have all of the records of their criminal convictions, unspent or otherwise. So we are already checking this. But it is just sort of a fail safe, so that if someone is applying and they do have that conviction on their DBS, and it will show up on their DBS, they know from the get-go that they're not going to be eligible. So if they then apply again and say, no, I don't have a criminal conviction, but they allow us to see their DBS, which they have to as part of the process, they will be sort of booted out a little bit later on in the process. The idea of the question is to set their expectations from the start to say that they won't be eligible for that licence. I hope that answers your question. Can we go back to the slides, please, Kieran?
The slides?
Yes, please. I think we've got a bit of an idea for what that application form looks like. We don't need to go through each question.
Okay.
But I think we've sort of got a flavour of that, and why it's important that we're looking at the digital solution rather than the paper copy. I'll now hand over to Kira, who will talk a little bit more about how we've actually been testing this prototype. So over to you, Kira.
Thanks, Grace. So a user research on this project. So I'll just be going over the user research so far. So we've recently held 5 user research sessions with participants who have varied levels of experience as chaperones or varied levels of interactions with the chaperone license application process. The feedback we received in these sessions was quite varied, but the common theme was the form was a lot cleaner, the content was clear, the form was easy to navigate, and overall an improvement on the current service, which was great to hear. Next slide, please, Kieran. So we've also recently held a focus group with the customer panel. This was focused around understanding their experiences online and filling out application forms just in general. So going into this session, the goal was to understand what their needs were as users, and whether there were any potential blockers that we'd not considered, or anything that we'd missed out. We also used this session to show them our prototype, so the form that Grace had just gone through, sorry. So we could also just gain their insight on this as well, which was really useful for us.
Carl, can I just ask some detail about who this customer panel is? Is this a group of people that have a vested interest in chaperone licenses, or they're a generic group of customers? Who are we talking about here?
Just a generic group.
Okay.
The customer panel was just a representation of Birmingham. We had 2 people in this panel. They didn't necessarily have any links to the chaperone application process.
Okay, so I assume they're 2 Birmingham citizens.
Yeah.
Shall I come in, Carl?
Yes,
Imran, customer panel is part of the work customer service programmes done to establish a group of citizens representative of our city to help inform and shape service design as we move forward. So it's a core group of around 10 that meet on a regular basis every 6 weeks or so, but there's a wider group, and we do invite them into support other work streams as well. So they've supported on children's, as we've outlined today, but they've also contributed to some work that we've done on voice automation and also the clean air zone as well. So they're a group of, as you say, citizens that are really there to get their voices heard and help influence and shape service design based on the needs of our users.
Okay, sure, Nikki. I'm just trying to understand who we're talking about.
No,
Great.
that's cool.
Thanks, Nikki. Yep, next slide, please, Kieran. Great, so in terms of next steps for user research, with the recent round of user research completed, our next steps will be to begin the analysis of the data that we've recorded. So our plan is to involve the wider delivery team in our analysis session that we have coming up, where we'll review the data and categorise into appropriate themes. And then from here, the user research team will pull together a tracker for the data and analyse further any insights or actions that we can identify, so we can plan our next steps from there. Next slide, please, Kieran. And then lastly, our next planned round of research will be with the staff at BCC, so aiming to involve everyone who manages chaperone licence applications. With these sessions, our goal is to show the staff our prototype, understand their opinions on the changes that we've made, and just generally hold a place for us to hear their perspective on things as well. We currently don't have a set timeline for this next round of research as we're still in the planning stages, but our next steps will be to issue these opt-in emails for the staff and begin sending out invitations for these sessions as soon as possible. Question there.
I think we have a question related to user research. Will there be any detailed user research with specifically interested parties rather than the generic panel?
So the first round of research that we've just completed was with people who had interacted with the chaperone licence application process, and then the staff one we have coming up will be specifically people that are interacting with that from a staff perspective. Is that what you mean?
I thought you just said that you did the first round of research with the customer panel rather than specific people.
Sorry, no, that we had the first round of user research, and then we also had the customer panel. So the two separate research sessions that we had.
So it was both, Simon.
Yeah, I wonder whether, Kieran, it's worth going back 2 slides so we can just show that part of it as well. So yeah, we've conducted 5 user research sessions with people who have different levels of experience and interaction with the chaperone license application. Some of these were people who had applied previously, but others were people who were keen to apply. So these were people with a vested interest in the service. We did this alongside the customer panel. The customer panel was an additional insight that we got here.
Thank you.
Okay, and we get a sense of that they think a lot of improvements have made. Do we have any sense of where they think further improvements need to be made in order to make it more user friendly?
Yep, so that is something that we will be looking to analyse, and we haven't got to the analysis stage. Our analysis session is on Thursday next week, so we will be able to report back more details then. There are definitely some improvements that we can make to this based on some of that research.
Oh, cool, Grace. Brilliant.
No worries. That's the whole point of us doing this research, is to try and iteratively improve what we're already producing. It's not to give ourselves a pat on the back, although it's nice when that happens, but it is to sort of make sure that we are designing the right service for the right people in the right way.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you've given any thought in, like, often we hear a lot of talk about making the guidance clearer, but a lot of the times in my experience, people ignore the guidance, they ignore the content, they go straight to the
100%.
form.
Yeah, so we've worked really hard, and hopefully you could see a little bit in the prototype to make sure that we put some of the guidance in that customer facing prototype as well. So even if they don't pay attention to the guidance that we give them up front, which we have made shorter and a lot more user friendly, they will get sort of snippets of that guidance as they go through the application form.
Yeah, that would make sense if the form could be more intuitive, because like all of us, we tend to skim read guidance.
100%. Yeah, and it's something that we're looking at in this first round of research as well. One question we're actually asking our users are, did you read the guidance? Yes, no. And then whether or not they did you understand what was expected of you? Because even if they didn't read the guidance, but they did understand the expectation, that's okay. It's just making sure that they are following the protocol that we need them to and understanding what's expected of them at each step.
Cool, brilliant.
Was that everything? Sorry, Kira.
Yes, sorry, yeah, that is. Thanks for chiming in as well, Grace. Yeah, passing on to Vicky now.
Hello, my name's Vicky Sullivan, and I'm the Head of Business Improvement and Support for Children and Families. And the service lead, so I've got a team that supports the child employment team. The head of service responsible for the child employment team reached out to us to help improve things on the back of the Commonwealth Games, and as part of lots of different feedback. We had some tricky issues with customers. We had really slow processes. We put some improvements in place in business support, but then I felt that we could go further. So we reached out to the customer programme, who really rallied round and helped us look at it properly. Our experience from the service side and from business support side has been really positive. They've been really lovely, really helpful. No assumptions have been made about how things worked. They've got under the skin of everything, looked at the statutory responsibilities, the guidance, best practice, the requirements of citizens, the requirements to keep children safe, the budgets, how other authorities work, what best practices. So it's been really helpful. It's allowed the staff to work together and work with the programme team and reflect on how we could do things differently, which we don't ordinarily get time to do in our day-to-day jobs. We've made some improvements as a result of that reflection, but we're also very excited about going through this journey with the team. It's a big group of professionals with lots of different technical expertise, and they've been very patient with us. They've backtracked if we've missed anything. They've taken the time and the sensitivity to bring the staff on board with the programme, and I can't rate it highly enough. It's been brilliant, and I'm so excited for us to make those improvements and really do a lot better for children and families, keeping them safe and giving them access to opportunities. And that's it. Apologies from Tracy Linton, by the way. She's the head of service with responsibility for child employment. She couldn't make it today, but she's also sent some really glowing and positive feedback. So I'll pass that on to the team. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vicky.
So I was going to conclude with some next steps, unless there's any questions at this point. Nope, wonderful. So for our kind of service timeline here, you can see going from June to towards the end of November there, we're looking at the actions that will take us through building iteratively as part of our kind of agile software development. So rather than just doing a kind of a big bang release, that we're building up in small iterations, testing as we go, and making sure that we really double check our findings to make sure that we're not kind of making any assumptions. So yeah, going kind of sequentially across from June. So updating the application prototype, as you've seen there, that Grace has pulled together, which is an excellent piece of work, and then feeding in those findings from user research to make sure that it does meet the user need fundamentally. And then from there, we're going to work with the development element within BCC to build that into a piece of real code rather than a prototype. And then whilst that's being worked on, we'll look at as has been alluded to previously, the staff guidance, and look at the back end, kind of the person pressing the buttons behind the scenes, so the back end administrative functionality, making sure we build that out, test our assumptions and our theories on how that will look and feel for the user, and then work that into live, ready for the kind of integration, end-to-end testing, or private beta, however it's been referred to in the past. So yeah, ready to take us towards the end of the year for the live deployment, where a citizen using the service will be able to apply for a chaperone license in the wild. So yeah, thank you very much. Any questions?
Excellent, thank you, Kieran.
Yes.
We've had quite a few questions in the chat, which I think we have responded to all of them. Just checking as we've gone along. Just going to quick look through. So Dave Sharp, you put a question in about why this work was with the customer program rather than the service area. So both Nikki and Wendy have covered that off for you. So initially it was responding to a request from the deputy leader and the service director, because it really was an important piece of work that needed to move forward. Also, as Wendy said, although there is planned work for the programme in year 2, when we get to certain areas, they're not always ready for us. So we can look to prioritise. We can't do it all of the time, but we were able to do it with this. And as you can see, there's been some really excellent progress. With regards to the level of demand for licenses, Vicky has answered that one. So it can fluctuate throughout the year and include performance licensing, chaperone licensing and work permits. Peak times are around school holidays, when children are most likely to be involved in, for example, theatrical performances, and need licenses then. Just going down to and you asked also, I think Angela also asked for the volumes on average. Vicky, I think you responded to that further down. Just trying to find your response now. If I can bring you in.
Yes, I've responded to that.
You have, yeah. Okay, I'm just going through any others. Simon, did we answer your question as we went along with regarding it being a Figma mock-up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see how it progresses. Yeah.
Okay, so we've done that one. The research, we've responded to that. That was another query that Simon put in. So we answered that as we went along. Trying to see if there's any more. David, you've put one in just now about it being a very long project life cycle for a single process. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm just surprised. This is like going to be a 12 months process. That's long for a very urgent piece of work that's been put forward. Is there no way to do like an MVP and get some value out there earlier than that for them?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Vicky's coming in as well. So
Yeah.
in parallel to that, David, there has been a lot of work that service has been doing as well, based on the recommendations, a lot to do with supporting the culture and revising the business processes, how the team are working. So we have been iterating on some elements that service can actually lead on. We are looking at 3 processes. This particular one, we're covering off the chaperones and the training, and there's been a lot of legislative requirements that we've really had to unpick in terms of, you know, what the service actually legally needs to do, what we have been doing, and then how we actually support that moving forward. So yeah, do take your point on that, and I don't know if any more of the team want to come in.
I'm just very conscious that, you know, you've got contractors on here. If contractors are going on something for 12 months, that's going to end up being an incredibly expensive service improvement project.
It's not the
yesterday's
only
news.
But it's not the only thing
It's not the
that
only
they're
activity,
working
but,
on.
yeah.
That it's, you know, it's not just this, that there's other work running alongside of this as well.
And we've had to bring in contractors just to get the resources, the capacity that we need within the team to do the work, because the resources weren't there. So it's not because, you know, this is the option that we've chosen, it's to mitigate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nikki. Vicky, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, the work has been really thorough. It's been really important to do because it's safeguarding children at the end of the day. And the added difficulties are there have been changes in leadership in the service in children and families. So we've had to do some backtracking and re-engaging people that are leading this process. So that's added, I think, to some of the timescales.
Thank you, Vicky. Dosia?
Hi, thank you so much for the question. I think it's important also to think about everything that has been mentioned here. So how important it is that we do this right, because we are talking about safety of children. So is MVP, just a high-level MVP would be great for some other projects. I don't think this would be the very right approach here, because we are talking about, again, safety of children. So what would we be reducing to? There is no reduction approach to this kind of work. This is 1, and 2, I think what was also very important was understanding, and that was a very, very important part of this work, was understanding the problem. So what has happened that the service has ended up having these problems, and unpicking from that, rather than coming up with answers before we knew the problems, before we knew the questions, which we know that can happen with MVPs, is just trying to guess, is it going to work? We couldn't be guessing whether things would be working, because that would be having impact on the safety of children. It's also understanding what is the problem and what we can do collectively to address the problem and never have it again in the future. So it's designing something, co-designing something with all those valued team members, listening to them and speaking with the users to build something that is going to be sustainable, rather than an MVP that then stays an MVP forever. So I think this is why it's been like this. And actually it is, I think, 12 months for such a significant project is actually, I would say, very good timeline.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Your word for that.
Sorry, David, I didn't catch that.
If I'll take your word for it. I'm not. Of course, it's important, which makes me wonder why are we doing this part time then, amongst other things, rather than a dedicated team to deliver the right outcome quickly, because presumably this is to mitigate risk. 12 months to leave children at risk seems an awfully long time. Why do it part-time and get along the programme? Why not have a dedicated team to get through it?
We have got a dedicated team on it.
Yeah.
I think what
So
we're
they're
trying to
full-time
allude
on this
to.
then, Nikki? Are they
Sorry?
full-time on this?
So the team that we've got working on this are working on the skills that we need. So the disciplines that we need at the given points that we needed are working full time in terms of the capacity that they've got on this programme. Obviously we flex as we need to. So as the requirements where perhaps you are goes down, then there are other activities that the programme has that they will flex and move on to. But the team, you know, we've moved as quickly as we've been able to, David, really, on this. Has been things that have been uncovered partway through the process that, you know, as the team has said, we've had to go back to, and, you know, that's impacted on not only the service design, but the user research. And this is why it's been so critical that we actually do it thoroughly and do it right, because, as you say, the risk of, you know, we don't want to rush through, and I take your point around the risk to safeguarding children, which is why the service has been working collaboratively with us to put in measures to address some of those critical issues that we uncovered as part of that discovery. So they've mitigated that while waiting for the kind of technical solution to be implemented. I hope I've covered that succinctly, Vicky and team.
Yeah, I think you have, Nikki, thank you. And I think, you know, one of the key words that you've used there is, you know, not leaving stones unturned and doing it, you know, as a real thorough, in-depth piece of work. Thank you. Vicky, can I bring you in?
I just wanted to clarify something, that children are not at risk at the moment while we're working through these improvements. It was the issues were that the licenses and the process of checking was taking much too long and causing too many issues for customers, and ending up with children not being able to participate in some things because we weren't quick enough. So we haven't left children at risk for 12 months. That's not been the focus. The focus has been improving the process to make it easier.
See, the thing is, there's somebody watching this, the programme team are heavily leaning on child protection issues, and yet the children are at risk. Do you see where I'm struggling to know if either urgent or it isn't?
It was urgent because of the poor state of service that people were getting, and the fact that we'd had feedback saying that some children wouldn't be considered if they were from Birmingham because it was taking too long to provide them with a licence for performance or for chaperones. So it was preventing children having access to those opportunities. And actually, whenever you review a process, you do find areas where you could make it more robust, where you could make it not only quicker, but more robust in terms of safeguarding and statutory compliance. And that's what we're aiming for.
Okay.
Question, Geraldine, there's a question around the technical team, just supporting on the development. So just on that, we did a technical options appraisal as part of the process, just looking at obviously the right solution to support the team. So we have been working closely with tech, and once the decision was made in terms of what option we would proceed with, we have been engaging with the local developers on that, so that they have been cited on the prototype today, and they will be fully onboarded as we move through into that stage of build.
Okay.
And what platform you've chosen to build it in?
It will be, we're going with Netcore low code.
Okay.
Okay, and there's also a question here, are BCC staff being trained in the end-to-end process of the development life cycle to reduce the need for contractors going forward, to reduce future costs by completing the work in-house? So we do obviously have BCC staff working on the programme that are working alongside colleagues from methods, learning those skills and working very closely with them, and that has been throughout the programme. That has been the approach. Nikki, I don't know if you want to add anything further to that.
I would, Geraldine, but I zoned out for 2 seconds. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can come in quickly as well, just to say
yeah.
that it's a really big part of what we do when we do
It
come in
is,
and
the
work with the
coaching.
council, is coaching, making sure that we are making all of our processes really transparent, allowing people to see what we're doing and why. So yeah, it's definitely a really big part and a big focus for the programme.
Yeah, so it's not just a case of contractors coming in doing the work. It is staff, BCC staff, that are working on the programme, working alongside, and, you know, really learning from them as well, so we can take this forward in the future. Okay, I can't see any other questions. Becky, you put one in. I thought the recent IT restructure resolved the resource issue. Do you want to expand on that a bit more, or?
So just to say, the recruitment is still ongoing.
Yeah, not all roles have been filled, have they?
Not as of yet.
No.
So I understand there are some challenges. So yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've missed any other questions. So before we close, has anybody else got any questions that they'd like to ask? Just tossing a new one go in. Yes, the slides could be shared. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get all those out and shared with everybody. Okay, so hopefully that's really given you a good insight into this work that's been underway. You've actually heard from Vicky from the service side, and what a difference it's made, how she's found working with the programme team, which, you know, is really positive feedback. You know, some really fantastic work happening here that will make a massive difference. So I'd like to just thank all the presenters this afternoon and the team that have been working on this, some absolutely fabulous work. And thank you all for attending, and hopefully that's given you a good update on this work stream and what's been going on. If there are any further questions that you think of, then just please contact us, and we'll be more than happy to come back to you on those as soon as we can. So if there are no further questions, we'll be able to give you all 10 minutes back. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Geraldine. Thanks, team.
Bye.
Thanks all.